What was Winston's first significant act of rebellion? You could say it was writing, taking the choice to open the book and write, but actually it was buying the book, which was in the past, right? So the first act of rebellion that we see in the novel is him writing it, but he talks about how he actually bought it previously. And when he bought it, he was thinking about what he might do there. He was trying to retrieve something from the past. Does Big Brother like the past? Big Brother doesn't like the past because that is basically fixed. It's a fixed reality. You can't change it, although Big Brother does try to. It's a more specific answer here. Like, why wouldn't he like the historical past pre-Big Brother? Like, Big Brother came into power a couple of decades before Winston is writing this novel, or the 1950s, I think it's implied that Big Brother came into power. But why doesn't Big Brother like anything that represents something from before that? Because Winston's got this old journal. It's an old journal. He likes old items, historic items. So the past, pre-Big Brother, provides a means of historical comparison, which, if known or if accessible, would then provide reason for collective disillusionment. Now, disillusionment means that you lose faith and trust in Big Brother. Because if people can see what the world was like before Big Brother, then they will immediately disengage with Big Brother and think, I don't want to be led by Big Brother. Look how good the world was before. But Big Brother manipulates reality, right? The inner party. When I say Big Brother, we know that Big Brother is an icon. It's not actually a person. It's an idea. And it's represented by the inner party, if you remember. And the inner party, which is led by which character? Or who is embodied by which character? O'Brien is the face, if you like, of the inner party, at least for our purposes. And that inner party embodies Big Brother. And they try and destroy any remnant of history that could provide a means of comparison for the collective. Because if everyone has access to that past, which was a better past in Oceania, right? People barely have food. Did you get that from the novel? That they're basically all impoverished? Because it is not a capitalist society. They have descended into this totalitarian communist society where food has to be rationed out and nothing is that productive. There is no entrepreneurship or innovation in this society. So if people were to catch on about how bad this society is, then they would rebel and they would actually become disillusioned. So that's why Big Brother has to make sure that the past, especially pre-Big Brother, we have to destroy any recollection of that. And we also have to convince people who lived through that time period, because who's one of the people who actually saw the pre-Big Brother period? The old guys, but also Winston. So Winston knows. So there's a vulnerability of Big Brother to memory of the past. But that's why Big Brother actually tries to convince people to convince themselves that those memories are not real. They have to tell themselves lies. And what's that notion called in the novel? What's that notion called where you have to hold two conflicting realities and just accept that? Paradox. So doublethink is a paradoxical aspect of Big Brother's dogma, you could call it. It's a dogma, like a religion, right? That's like a key tenet. So doublethink is a paradoxical tenet of Big Brother's ideology. The act of rebelling in the form of buying a diary, can we just clear up why exactly that's rebellious? So Big Brother doesn't like people retracing or unveiling the past, but he also, more importantly, doesn't like people to think critically and to self-reflect. So the experience of self-reflection is repressed because no one's allowed to write journals and diaries. Because if people become self-expressive, self-expression is dangerous. What are they losing? What are they moving away from? They no longer embody Big Brother's ideology. Now, what's the key word? And this ties to a key theme that I want you guys to keep in your mind the whole way through today and your revision, is that Big Brother is trying to extinguish the individual sense of self. So self-expression is obviously inconsistent with that goal. If you are expressing yourself in a diary, then suddenly you no longer are the ideology of Big Brother, because that's not consistent with that ideology. Okay, great. So you need to understand that. But we don't want a world where people can express themselves freely. We want a world where they are the ideology. Does anyone recall any particular aspect of the evidence of the text that would signify that Big Brother is obsessed with basically penetrating the individual psyche? There is a motif of a nursery rhyme where it is about infiltrating the psyche, if that's what you mean. So that there is that motif of music, could we say more generally? Can you think about why music plays all the time? There's always sound and stimuli throughout the novel. Why is that? The motif of sensory imagery demonstrates Big Brother's attempt to distract and drown out independent thought or critical thought. That's a really key concept. That's almost like a thesis there, okay? Obviously, you don't want to use the technique part in that thesis, but the argument there is that Big Brother, in terms of trying to take psychological control, is attempting to suppress independent/critical thought. But the other thing was, does everyone remember how much it talks about the smell of gin and the taste of gin? Everyone reeks of gin. Victory gin, it's called. Does everyone remember that? Winston's in the cafeteria. He's always drinking gin, you might recall. Everyone smells of gin. Why is that? What does that symbolize? Drowning their sorrows, but in the same way, I think, let's reverse it. Not just drowning away the sorrows, they're actually ingesting in what? They're consuming or ingesting the ideology of Big Brother. That's why people reek of the gin in the novel, if you look at it. Because they're always drinking it. It's actually symbolic. They even, does anyone remember as well, what's the other kind of image that we see at the end of the novel with Winston? At the end of the novel, where Winston basically completely gives up and submits to Big Brother, does everyone remember that? He says, I love Big Brother. He cries tears of gin. It says he cries 2 gin-scented tears. So do you see that even the tear ducts are the gin? So do you get what I'm saying here? It represents the consumption and embodiment of the ideology, because now people's odors and their biological and their internal organs, right? And those kind of aspects of their biology have been infiltrated. So they embody Big Brother's ideology, because you can see that through the absorption of the ideological gin, right, the symbolic gin, into their internal chemistry. Why don't we call that their bodily or biological chemistry?